Hey everyone, how are you? Good morning, afternoon, evening. My name is Joe, and today I want to show you something that I kind of figured out. I don't know if it stumbled on. It was just kind of worked through today. Actually, it was kind of fun, but a little bit of a pain in the butt, and definitely a little difficult to fully understand. Trust me, I'm not saying that about you. That is more about me. All right, so I don't have the question anymore, but I was on Reddit today and there was a question that somebody posted in the Sass subreddit that was, he was having trouble. I think he was having trouble. The question was kind of convoluted and very wordy, and I couldn't really tell if the dude was asking a legit question or if he was just merely kind of trying to show off some of his code or something. So, but I took it as a question, and I went from there. So what it looked like his question was this, that he was having trouble. He was trying to build something in Sass that did this. Basically what he wanted was, let's imagine down here for a minute, I have some CSS, and I have this idea of, I have a concept of a button. Okay, that makes sense, right? Everybody gets that. But sometimes you have variants that you want on that button, and a variant can be really anything you want to think about it. It doesn't matter what it is, but let's just say that you have both a size, and then maybe some buttons can be blocked or like blocks, or some buttons can be inline or whatever. And those are variances that you would have on your code. So you would want something that looked like this dot button. At the end of the day, this is what's going to be spit out. So maybe you'd want something that would say block, and then you would want dot button small. And these are different types of variants that you could have on the standard button. There's also, you could do something where you have button secondary block, and you can combine all these things. You can have dot button secondary block small. So that's kind of a mouthful, but you could do something like this, and this is what he was seeming to be able to get. But then he was having a problem with what happened if he needed to have a hover class. That was all of a sudden kind of breaking the code that he wrote. And I sat down and I thought about it. I looked at his code, a little bit that he had, and actually it was a lot. And I couldn't really follow it 100%. So there was definitely some stuff going on in there that I was like, that looked really interesting, but I just couldn't get my head around it too much. One of the main things that he was doing that I saw, though, was that it looked like he was trying to use append, the CSS or the Sass function append, to like kind of break apart a class name and then or like append things to class names based on where it was. And I was like, that's so interesting, but I don't think you actually need to do that. And it turns out you don't. So here's the finished code. I want to show you how this would work first, and then we'll go through some examples. I'm going to get rid of that because that's just ballooning up all the code. So here, well, actually here, let me put that back so you can see this thing work over here. So you can see the final bits of code over here that I got actually working. I'm able to have button and then a secondary button that can be a block, and this one's extra small. And you see over here how the hover is working, that it's truly a block hover, and it's got its own hover element on it right there. So it's totally working. I could take this off, and now it's the same size as a normal button. I could make it extra small, but get rid of the block, and now it doesn't have the hover right here, but it does have the hover over the actual element because now it's in line. So these are all different things that you can do with these things. And the code you see that's been produced, it's a lot of code, but when you start getting into the idea of variants with your code, you balloon up your CSS like there's no tomorrow. But it works. So, okay, cool. We got that there, and that's our secondary button, and it's almost exactly the same as the button code. Let's just kind of dissect this for a minute and see what I was doing to actually get this to work. With queries is actually pretty much just going to give you all the media queries. I didn't even use them in here. So for this example, to go through this right now, I'm going to delete that, and I'm also going to delete the with queries thing because that's not super important for what I'm talking about. And truth be told, I didn't even need this mixin really. The mixin that I made there was more just because it helps for just sharing your code. All right, now You can see here I have this button class right at the top, and I'm just using font size 30 pixels, and that's it. So that's what our button is, just something that's font size 30 pixels and whatever. But size and variance gives us the ability to create now extra small buttons, and then block buttons, and then block and extra small buttons. And you see how the code works. It's saying, okay, here's extra small, which is now overriding the font size right here with font size 12. This is a block button, so it's, it's just adding the display block on it, and this extra small has both of those styles added onto this thing. So it's working, it's good, it's doing everything it needs to do. How is this doing this? Well, we have two things. So if you're just going to be a user and kind of a consumer of this, really you only need to be able to do two different things. So you can create any variant you want in what's called a variant list. So there's a mixin that I have that's called variant list. And then you kind of just inside there, you say for variant, and then you give it the name, and you give it the name block in this case, and that's going to generate this name right here for you. And then whatever you put inside of here is going to just correctly show up. You do need the @ content though. Now almost the exact same thing for sizes, but sizes are slightly different. So for sizes, I just say @size, and then you give it a size name that you want. And again, this name can be anything you want. You could programmatically generate these names, like you could put these into a list and do a for each or something like that over this, or an each. But I didn't do that here. So if you wanted to, you can really just put this as whatever you want, and it's going to totally change over here. But you could just make that like, a list that is always looped over, and then it would be, or like you have to pull from, a list. So I'd have to say like X small, or else if I said XX small, it wouldn't work. There's ways of kind of making this a little bit more, give you a little bit more or less control, I guess, like make it less loosey-goosey than I did it here. But for our purposes, this works pretty well. So, all right, so yeah, if you're gonna just kind of consume these and play around with this library, that's all you need right there. This is gonna do everything else for you, and then you just include size and variance with font size in there, and then these guys will just get created. And anything you put inside of here is gonna correctly work. So if I go like this, and I call this block or flex, I say display flex in there, I now have size and variance for block and flex. Totally works, totally doing all the same stuff. So that's pretty simple. And again, same for sizes. And now I create small, and I make the button size 14 pixels in size. You can now see how everything is, now there's X small, small, overriding everything correctly. Now you might be sitting here just saying, well, why are you overriding this? It's only just one style. You got to remember what I'm doing here, because I know this looks weird. Like it looks like, well, you're just duplicating why are you bothering with duplicating that? Think about this for a minute. The font size is like, this is like one of a lot of things that would be in here. So if you were creating a real button, you'd also probably have like, none, padding maybe 0 around the whole thing, margin maybe 0, and then maybe you'd add like, maybe you have a real like background color. Oop. And then a real, so you're going to have like all of these like legit styles that you're going to put on here, right? So what you're seeing right now with the, and then, so now just to round that out, you see font size 30 right there. And then here's the one style that's kind of overriding all of it. So if you're looking at it saying, well, why didn't you just, do an extend and not use that in there or something else? Like, why are you copying that one style? You got to remember how this is going to work in a real world situation. In a real world situation, you're going to have lots of styles for whatever the button is. All right, so kill that out for a minute. So again, this is just, for brevity, basically, we're doing that. All right, so that's pretty much it. That's the code for just using this. For using this, that's all you got to do. Now the code you'd have to put inside your library somewhere and like hide it. This is the here be dragons part. There's just 3 or a couple mixins in here. So the first one is this thing, size and variance. So that's the one that we called. It has this @content, or it has @content being used 3 separate times in here. So that's the placement of these at contents is critical. So the first one is it's calling out to size and list, or size list, which is this one. And notice in here, there's also contents. So there's lots of kind of, it's almost like for like this like deep nested kind of like weirdly recursive stuff that's going on in here. So that's the main size and list function, or Mixin that's being called. This one is just this with queries. I'm not even going to go through this right now because that's just the how to do the query stuff. But the for variant and for and at size things are really dead simple. It's just for at size, it's just the colon and then the size name that you want, and then we're dropping the content in there. For the variant, this one is a little bit different because we have to actually have the parent name that we want. So block, let's say, block goes in there. We drop the content in there, and then we also have to repeat the size list again. So once you have the one piece of data, like once you said block, now you have to say, okay, give me all the sizes for that too. So this is where, and this is why these things start to balloon up really, really fast. And this is why even anything like, tailwinds and things like that, that uses the concept of variance, the code balloons up. Why you must have, like, you have to use purge CSS or something like that, because you're just gonna get gigantic bits of code. And it's the same thing for this. If you were to just make this and use this yourself, I mean, you can see real quickly here, somebody could look at this and say, oh, really, this is all your code. That's all you did. And then you added this, these 3 blocks here. You have like 5 lines of CSS, like legit CSS, and it generated 39 lines of code. And this is without the media queries. When you put the media queries in there, it's going to balloon up even more. So it's a lot of stuff going on in here. Now, what the hell is this actually doing? So let me try to explain this, because it's definitely, it's a little, it's just kind of inception-y to kind of get your mind around it for a minute. So, all right, let's scroll down to here. So so size and variance, let's just take this font size 30 pixels. That's an easy one to just start with. So when you call this include, what happens? Well, it's got a content in there. So it takes this. You can almost imagine it like taking a copy of this, taking this code out, copying it, and saying, okay, I'm going to put that right here. And then I'm going to put that, and then we're calling it the size and list thing again. And I want to put this right here. But this has a content, this has a content thing also. So I have to take that, and before I can put it in here, I have to go into this code and say, well, where does this go? Well, it actually goes here. That's where I need to drop this, but this is an at size thing. So I also need to then go down into at size and see where that is. And that's right here. So, okay, so now 30 pixels goes here. So that's where, so it dropped all the way down to the bottom, and that's where now 30 pixels sits inside of this. Then this code were to get built up and put inside of like here. So that's where that whole thing kind of goes, right? And then this, and then this whole block, and then, say it did the same thing for this, really, right? Then everything inside of here and size for size list gets dropped in here. So you got 30 pixels here, and then you got all that other crap just like bam, right there. And then it does the exact same thing for variant list. So it goes into variant list and says, okay, well, I got 30 pixels. Well, nope, I got to fall all the way through. So variant list, it falls through to here. And then it falls through. So let's just take this one. So then it falls through from here to for variant. And it falls through to this. And it says, okay, well, that's where this thing is going to go right there. And then it says, well, but I got this other for content inside of here, but I got to, then it falls through another. It's like almost like traps that it kind of just keeps falling down until it can't fall any further. So size list is this now has still the 30 pixels in there. So it looks for size list and it says, here's where I go. And that's where I put 30. So now you have 12, you have 30 pixels, 12 pixels, and then it starts bubbling its way back up again. So yeah, that's kind of how the whole thing works. It's like the content, if you have like 5 nested contents, it has to kind of fall all the way through to the very bottom and then roll itself back up before it can actually finish. So it's kind of like this, it's recursion essentially that it's doing, because it's got to hit the bottom before it slowly builds itself back up again. So that's how it works, but it totally works. It's not slow at all. You see it compiling, so it works really fast. Again, the problem with something like this, and I don't know if I wouldn't necessarily I mean, you could totally use this to create like your own Tailwind-esque library if you wanted to. I would just use Tailwind if I were you, if you're going to do that, because they've already kind of thought through a lot of these things. But if you wanted to kind of create your own bespoke thing, you could really do it with pretty much just that, to create like your own variations on things. And then again, with the final piece on top of that being the media queries. So the way my media queries works is I have a list that is defined somewhere in my code. So it says XS and then whatever it is. So in this case, min width. So this is going to be my media query that I use, and this will be the size that it gets turned into. And then it has to do all this stuff, which is essentially just a loop, and then it checks if it's the first time through. So the first time through, it makes sure that the first element in the list doesn't have a media query. So I'll show you that being rendered real quick. What did I call it? I don't think I called it with queries. And boom, there we go. So now you see that it's got button, small, X small. You got small, blah. You have button, X small, then block, X small, then block small, and then flex X small. Like, you see how it's kind of building. But then here we go with the media queries. Now it's got XS, and then all that stuff up there is with the XS stuff down here. So everything kind of gets double, however many media queries you have, it's going to create. So I just did this one for the extra small size. So I think you can see that if you have a lot of variants and a lot of sizes in here, you're going to make your code really huge really quickly. And again, I don't even have real styles in here. I just have like one font size 30 pixels. So if you start adding like a ton of styles in here, you're going to have a lot of code really quickly. We're up to 80 lines of basically bullshit code at this moment in time. That again, is it a big deal? I don't know. It depends on your website. It's one of those things where I always tell people, when people are concerned, like, oh, I feel like I'm getting, the size of my site's getting really large here. It's like, well, okay. That may or may not be a problem. Are you caching your stuff? Yeah. Okay. Well, then probably not even going to be that big of a deal. But if you're, if there's, did you use purge CSS? Can you clean up some of the stuff that you're not using in the out of this code? If the answer is yes, do that too. Are there variants and things you don't actually need and you're never going to use? Like if you're never using a button variant here that is for block and all of your buttons are flex, I'm just making something up. Then why the hell do you have this? Get rid of it. Like, don't screw that. Don't do that. We've already just went down from 80 to 52 lines now. So there's ways of making this more optimized and a little bit more performant. Just don't have everything, you don't use it for everything. The other thing would be, try to keep your size limits, your button sizes and all your different variants to a minimum. Like, do you need 10 variants? Do you need 15 sizes for everything? If you don't do it. The other thing you can do if you're not using media queries, actually. So I think this is going to change in a future version of Sass, but right now you can't extend out of a media query. So that just won't work. But in the future, they're going to, I think they're trying to work on allowing this. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I thought I heard somewhere they were going to. But what would be really nice is if you could do this. What is it? Button. Font size 30 pixels, right? Okay. So now if I can't do an extend in here, that just doesn't work. So you can see it's throwing an error right there, right now. It's like, nope, I'm not going to do it. And it didn't change any of the code on the other side of the screen because that just doesn't work. But if you don't need media queries, you get rid of that. again, just different ways you can work with this. If you don't need a media query, I was now able to just say, okay, use the extent. Oops, don't delete it. I'm able to just use this button thing, the like the placeholder extender, and look at that. Now I'm nicely extending these things. So I've dropped my code down from, what was I at before? Let's see. Do it this way real quick. Let's go back to this. So when we're kind of just using the what's more of a Mixins style code, where we're copying the code in line to line or place to place, we're at 25. So if I just extend it instead, we're down to 21. That's not bad. A little bit of, every little bit is going to help if you can do it. So, but this is a, this is a good little optimization if you need to do that. So just different things to kind of keep in mind. But again, this won't work until they fix or change Sass, I should say. I don't think it's a fix. It's more of just a change. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like it, give me the little thumbs up or whatever the hell it is on YouTube or Twitch or wherever you saw this, and subscribe, because I'm going to be putting out more and more content. Thanks, guys. Have a great one.